Ok, les damos la bienvenida a este segundo bloque de la primera cumbre internacional de bioinsumos organizada por Mundoagro y UC Davis. Es para nosotros un agrado poder estar con ustedes, a quienes se vienen integrando, quienes vienen llegando, a lo mejor algunos que llegaron rezagados un poquito más tarde, también darles la bienvenida. Y también, obviamente, veo que vienen todos también contentos, estuvieron conversando con todos que volvieran al salón. Seguramente había buena conversa, nos encontramos con buenos amigos, un buen café, un buen sanguchito a esta hora de la mañana siempre hace bien para reponerse, recargar energía, a la vez trabar amistad y hacer buenos negocios entre amigos del sector agrícola. Para partir con este segundo panel, invitamos a Mark Trimmer, socio de la consultora especializada Dunham Trimmer, quien mostrará la visión de los mercados a nivel mundial, justamente en este tema de los bioinsumos. La consultora Dunham Trimmer está especializada en el mercado de bioproductos para la protección y sanidad vegetal. Regularmente emite reportes sobre tendencias a los bioproductos en general y cada uno de los subsectores como los biopesticidas, biocontroladores y bioestimulantes. Bienvenido, Mark, a esta primera cumbre de bioinsumos.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate the invitation and the hospitality from UC Davis, Chile, and Mundoagro to attend and participate in this event. It's really quite encouraging and very exciting to see this many people attend the meeting. Pam, I'm sure many of us can remember it would be a dream to have this many people attend a meeting on biopesticides and biostimulants. So we're extremely happy to see this many people here today. So just a quick introduction on Dunham Trimmer and myself. We're a small company that focuses exclusively on the biological agricultural sector of biofertilizers, biopesticides, and biostimulants. We are based in 3 locations. I live in Florida. My other partner who helped found the company lives in Phoenix, and we have a new employee who works with us in Barcelona. And our focus is really on strategic business consulting and also market research for this sector. We do help out quite a lot with some of the mergers and acquisitions that are occurring in the sector, providing information on due diligence, on technical aspects, and commercial and marketing aspects of the companies. And we also do produce a multi-client study on both the biocontrol sector, and we're going to be launching one on the biostimulant sector before the end of this year. I always like to start out with this slide because I think it's important to make sure we're using the same terminology when we talk about things. So, we offer this slide free to anyone who would like to have it and use it. Just see me, or you can send me an email. My email address will be at the end of this presentation. But it's important to understand biological products includes many different things. We have the biofertilizers, which Alan spoke about before the break, and that enhance the nutrient uptake of both of nitrogen and also phosphorus and potassium, which are microbial based. We have the biostimulant section, which is a very diverse group of different kinds of products that are providing benefits that are not nutrient based and not due to pest control. And then we have the biological control part of the market, which includes both the biopesticides, which can be microbial or plant extracts, or can be pheromone-based, and it includes the macroorganisms, or the predatory insects and predatory mites that are used in biocontrol. So what does this market look like today? I'm going to speak first about the biocontrol market, And 25 years ago, this was a very small niche market worth about $100 million in total globally. It has seen tremendously fast and accelerating growth over the last, especially 10 years. At today's level, we see the market at $3.5 billion. We expect that it will grow to an excess of $5 billion sometime around 2020. And by 2025, we expect this market to exceed $11 billion. If we look at how the market is divided on a regional basis, Europe and North America are the two largest by value, but Latin America is the fastest growing. Overall, the market is growing at 16 to 17% globally, but in Latin America, it's growing at 18 to 20%. So while Latin America is not as large in value, it is definitely the fastest growing. USA and Europe today represent about 2/3 of the market in total value. We see them maintaining their dominant position in terms of value, but Latin America is going to start to gain and surpass Asia in terms of value. And as Pam mentioned in her talk, the EU, the growth is slower, and it's slower because of regulatory. The regulatory requirements in Europe have really repressed the development of biological products in Europe. Now, if we look at in terms of the type of product that's being sold, microbials represent about 55% of the market today, and microbials are the fastest growing segment. So we see them gaining share over the next 5 to 10 years. And by 2025, we believe that the microbials will be just under 60% of the biopesticide market. All three of the product segments, though, are growing at a much faster rate than the traditional conventional chemical pesticides. Chemical pesticides in 2017, according to Phillips McDougall, grew at only 3%. In the preceding 2 years, they actually didn't grow at all. The market was contracting. Over about the last 10 years, the conventional chemical market has grown at about a 5 to 6% per year average rate. Contrast that to the biopesticides, which are growing at 15 to 17%, and it's easy to see why some of the large chemical companies are quite interested in the biological markets. And if we look at use segments, what the product is used for, biopesticides today continue to be dominated by biofungicides and bioinsecticides. Bioherbicides are an area that many companies are interested in and are working hard to develop, but as we stand here today, they're a very, very small part of the market, probably less than 1%. So really, the biopesticide market today is a fungicide and insecticide market. Hopefully, Pam can change that for us in the future. The bionematicides is the other area that has really been gaining a lot of attention and a lot of new product entries from the biologicals. They still remain a small portion of the market, but they're growing quite rapidly. Now, if we switch gears and talk a little bit about biostimulants, the first thing whenever I talk about biostimulants is I have to talk about definitions, because it's always something that's confusing. In different parts of the world, people have different perceptions of what is a biostimulant. Many times, biostimulants are defined by what they are not. They're not fertilizers, and they're not pesticides. But it's hard to get a definition that really clearly encompasses what a biostimulant does without including things like plant growth regulators. You see here the model definition that the EU has developed. It's very similar to one that's being used in the U.S. In the Farm Bill that's currently undergoing review. But I think when you look at biostimulants, a couple things jump out. First is they're mainly based on organic materials, things like seaweeds, also amino acids, things of that nature. And many of the products are quite similar in terms of the active ingredient in comparison to biopesticides, where we have discrete microbials or unique plant extracts. Here, there's many companies that sell a seaweed-based product, and they're all based on an Ascophyllum nodosum seaweed. So there's a lot of similarity, and the companies really differentiate from their marketing and commercial positioning of those products in the marketplace, not from the technology at this point. And the other thing that's really key is the regulatory treatment of biostimulants on a global basis is very fragmented. In some countries, they're treated as a fertilizer and are regulated under fertilizer law. In some countries, there is no regulation for biostimulants. So what that means at the market situation is, from a manufacturing perspective, and I think Alan or Pam mentioned this as well, there's a very low barrier to entry because there's not a great deal of regulatory requirement. New companies, new products can enter this space quite easily. And also there's a high degree of product commoditization. By that I mean there's the differentiation from a technical basis between products is low. And they're often combined with secondary and micronutrients to create a combined fertilizer biostimulant product. From the customer situation, what we see is that there's a lot of technical support needed for the successful use of these products. It's unlike pesticides, where it's clear what the objective and how you determine if the treatment was successful. With biostimulants, it's not always quite as clear-cut. If we look at the biostimulant market, it's just over a $2 billion globally today. We see that growing to in excess of $3 billion in 2021, and we'll probably be approaching $5 billion by 2025. And if we look at how this market breaks out, we see that Europe is the dominant geographical sector. Europe represents nearly 1/3 of the market value for biostimulants, with North America and Latin America really sort of splitting the rest of the world. And in Europe, it's more of a mature market, particularly in Western Europe, whereas in Latin America and North America, it's still a growth market. We see that the seaweed sector is the largest individual sector of the market, but the microbials are the fastest growing. So we're seeing a lot more growth from them. Another thing I wanted to talk about is where biocontrol fits in the overall picture of the global crop protection market. And if we look at the global crop protection market, Phillips McDougall estimated it at $61.5 billion for 2017. And we often hear people say, well, biocontrol, biopesticides, they are only $3.5 billion. That's only about 5% of the market. But we believe that overlooks a few key factors. And if you look at this pie chart, I think it illustrates it quite well. Whereas if you divide the total sales of biocontrol into the total sales of crop protection, yes, you see a 5% market share for biopesticides and biocontrol. But you remember I mentioned earlier that there really are very, very few bioherbicides today. And when you look at it, biopesticides really are a fungicide, an insecticide, and a nematicide market. And when you look at their share in those three segments, it's really a 12% market share when you exclude herbicides. And then if you take a second look at it and you say, well, the vast majority of biopesticides are sold in fruits and vegetables, over 80%. And you look at just the fruit and vegetable market, you see that biopesticides represent nearly a 20% market share today in the fruit and vegetable market. So there's a very high awareness and understanding for fruit and vegetable growers of biopesticides and understanding and use of them already today, and that's still growing very quickly. So Pam talked a lot about sustainability and contrasting traditional and biological products, and I also was going to mention that a little bit too. As Pam mentioned, developing a new conventional chemical active ingredient costs nearly $300 million versus less than 10% of that to develop a biological. One of the challenges for the conventional chemicals is the more you use them, the more high the probability is that you can see pest resistance development, and that results in decreasing performance for the product. In contrast, the biocontrol products, because they are complex, because microbials nearly always produce multiple bioactive molecules that act as pesticides, you do not see resistance development for biocontrol. Environmental safety is always a challenge for the conventional chemicals in several areas, whether it be groundwater, whether it be pollinator safety, whether it be re-registration costs that they have to endure in order to keep the product on the market. In contrast, as Pam mentioned, there's a high degree of safety to the environment with the use of biologicals. And then the last thing it sort of refers to global restrictions, and this really hits at the pesticide residues. But it's not just the restrictions that are placed on pesticide residues by government agencies, but it also is restrictions that are placed because of consumer demands. Grocery stores and food marketers recognizing the opportunity to compete with one another by applying more stringent restrictions on pesticide residues are taking that opportunity and creating a real challenging situation for conventional chemistry. And that is an area that the biological and biocontrol products can really help. So what are the key factors driving the growth, this rapid growth of the biocontrol and biopesticide markets? I really categorize it into 4 areas. One is the regulatory advantages that they have over the chemistry that makes these products and these companies quite attractive to the large chemical, fertilizer, and seed companies. Second is resistance, and the fact that the products act as very good resistance breakers when combined with chemicals in an integrated program. Third is the residues, which directly relates to that consumer demand, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And fourth is improving R&D. As Pam mentioned in the close of her talk, improving microbiological techniques, improving fermentations, improving formulation chemistry is all making these products perform at a higher level. I took these facts from a survey that was conducted by Rodale and the Food Marketing Institute in 2016 about consumers' decisions on purchasing and how it's impacted by health in North America. And what we see when we look across these facts is that a high percentage of consumers, and especially young consumers in the millennial bracket, are making decisions on an attempt to avoid pesticide residues in their diet. Whether they're making the decision to purchase organic for that reason, or to go to local food markets where they have direct interaction with the grower. In many cases, the number one reason they cite for making that purchasing decision is a desire to avoid pesticide residues. And as I mentioned, grocery store chains are competing directly on this. See, this sign was taken from a Marks and Spencer store in the UK, where they have a large billboard advertising that they have restricted the use of pesticides on their fresh fruit and vegetables. For the biostimulant sector, It's really more of a sustainability and also a demand by the consumer to have an availability of high-quality fruits and vegetables year-round. With the consumer demand for that supply of fruits and vegetables, it means the growers often need to grow these crops somewhat out of season under more stressful conditions. And the biostimulants come into play there to help the grower to produce a quality product and with a good yield and good production when they're growing that crop, and maybe not the optimal conditions. So what's missing, and one thing that we talk to a lot with companies we consult on is about market access. But it's interesting to contrast the biopesticides and the biostimulant sector. In the biopesticide, most companies really are founded and evolve with an R&D focus. And part of that is because it's a highly regulated product. It has to get through a registration procedure, either in the EPA or in Europe or in Brazil, wherever. So there needs to be a high level of understanding of the product, how it works, what's in it, and what its potential impact is on non-target organisms in the environment. But for a company to succeed long-term, they need to develop a high level of competency in the commercial aspects, the sales, marketing, and the market access to areas where their product fits and where they can make use of that technology. So we see a trend in the marketplace where many companies are joining forces with another company, or they're being acquired or merging in order to gain better market access. If we contrast that to the biostimulant side, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these products really are more generic in nature. They are based on commonly available products, and the companies that really evolved from a commercial marketing and sales aspect. So they are basically very good at distribution, positioning, and marketing their products. But long term, they need to develop a more sound and credible scientific explanation for what their products do and how they work, and make them perform more consistently. So we see more and more companies in this space that are developing higher levels of competence in research and development and understanding the key aspects of how their products work and how to make them more consistent. And lastly, I just wanted to wrap up with this slide. I think it's very important. Sometimes we get so focused on our own little area that we forget that the grower is out there and using inputs from many different aspects and areas in order to enhance his productivity. So we have to think about the interaction and the potential synergies of these things, and in some cases antagonism. I do think precision ag has a significant synergy with both biocontrol and biostimulants, as you get better sensor technology, able to detect stress in the plants earlier so that you can make those applications in a more timely manner and get better results. Same with irrigation and avoiding stress on the plant due to lack of water will help to avoid getting into situations where it's difficult to provide a solid growing environment for the crop. So with that, I would like to thank you. I'd be happy to answer questions during the panel, or at any time during the break. Please come see me.